Hi, Everett. Um, to reply to your video, okay, I don't see, first of all, this isn't a complaint about your argument. I'm going to engage in your argument. It's an interesting video and argument that you made. Interesting line of reasoning. But just to start off, I don't see why skepticism to you is a problem to be solved. I know about these skeptical dilemmas, but Pyrrhonistic skepticism goes back to the 3rd century BC. And Pyrrho advised agreeing, assenting to what appeared to be the case, and that's the skeptical epistemology. That's the framework. We do agree with what appears to be the case, and we'll never know that what we think is useful really is useful. We'll never know that what we think is useful is something that we even really think is useful. Maybe we're being deluded. It doesn't matter. We know what we think that we think is useful, and we can act on it, and we can believe based on it. And, eventually you can test your beliefs and get more and more confidence in them. And that's through empiricism. Induction is just a theory, just a tool, just a rule of thumb. And really, it's empiricism. It's what appears to be the case. It's the appearances. It's through our sense experiences. Basically, you know, this is argued in terms of the human condition, okay? You get perceptions. You get them from internally, you get them, all of these perceptions, and you process them. That's basically the whole story, okay? And so empiricism is how we form ideas. We collect perceptions, we categorize, you know, the perceptions through pattern recognition. As far as we can tell, a lot of this pattern recognition is built in to us. Okay, that's concrete reasoning. Now, then we attempt to describe the categories. They give descriptions of why something's in a category and make all sorts of descriptions about the category. When you start to do this, you've begun to have abstract reason. When you are manipulating the categories rather than the things, you will have abstractions. Then you have categories of categories and so forth, and further abstractions. Okay, you are reasoning with the categories. Then you make predictions, concrete predictions, with the results of some of this reasoning. And uh, if they're verified, then that is the source of your confidence entirely. There is no, making induction. Induction is not why you believe them. We believe induction because of empirical evidence. We don't need induction to be proven in order to believe the empirical evidence. And, because it does depend on what are you believing it to be. See, the reason we have Descartes was not a skeptic. So he presented a skeptical dilemma as if to say, look, if I believe skepticism, look how terrible it is. And, no, it's just that you don't know that things are going to continue the way they've always been in the past. That's part of the principle of induction, generalizing, as you said, from the past. Well, things don't continue to be the same as they've been in the past. They change. We know things actually change. So the principle of induction isn't perfect. It's just an approximation. It's like trying to figure out where a car is going to go based on the car's momentum, even though there's a driver in the car. It's a good first order approximation, but really, it's just to give us a kind of an idea of where things are going. And we're never perfectly right. That's known as not being able to predict the future. So the principle of induction is a way to see into the future, but it's like looking down the road when you're in a car. It doesn't mean you're actually going to go exactly where you're looking at. And induction is just something that emerges not so much because the past is going to be like the future, but because there are more than one instance of a given object. There's things that are similar in the universe. And since categories work, categories expand, so some of the things in the future, fit in categories we've already created. And it's because of our cognition, because of the way we're processing information, that all this is happening. Not because we have a logical framework that has some sort of pure argument to make on the side and needs some sort of a pure justification. Or if you're going to go and talk about the rational mind, see, when you appeal to the rational man, you are appealing to an objective reference frame. You're trying to invent an objective reference frame. But what you've really done is you've taken all these individual reference frames that you've imagined by abstracting from your concept of your own self to 6 billion people, and you've tried to add them all up and average them out and created this idea of a rational person to play the role of an objective viewpoint. But you don't get an objective viewpoint. In this, you have to use your own viewpoint. The thing is, you could be mad, you could be manipulated, but this is what we try to test. This is why we write our arguments down, so somebody else can see them, so you can look at them. Sometimes you'll tell yourself an argument, if you write it down, even you can see it. So maybe the manipulator has limitations and you can outwit the manipulator. And this is what we pretty much believe, right? We act all the time on ways to get more accurate information out of our senses, more accurate information out of our thinking process. And this is why we codify things like the principle of induction, so that we can check ourselves against it. We can know, wait, are we using induction, cleanly, or are we doing something that we think is like induction, but we're fooling ourselves, and really it's something not like induction. Well, by defining induction carefully, you can decide that maybe you have a circular argument that isn't really inductive at all. So, you know, this is just to wrap back to how I started this. This is why, skepticism isn't really a problem. It's telling us what kinds of things we know. And the fact that we don't know the kinds of things we thought we had to know in order to have any knowledge at all is not really a big deal. I mean, it's just mistaken. Once you adopt the skeptical framework, you'll understand, yes, we don't know the future. We don't know the sun's coming up tomorrow. We don't know that, uh, anything is going to be like it was in the past. You can create tautological systems where induction works, perfectly, like mathematics, and you can apply these to nature and test them empirically. And then you apply them to nature, and it looks like induction, but it's really empiricism. And all knowledge comes from empiricism. It's the only source of any knowledge. All these abstractions that they wanted to come just sprout from the a priori, they too all came from experience. Or they're worthless. And they're not worthless. They came from experience.